It's time to get back in the courtroom, ladies and gentlemen. The Phoenix Wright trilogy were all original DS titles, right?
Objection!
Apollo Justice, Ace Attorney, was actually the first game in the series made for the Nintendo DS. The first 3 Phoenix Wright games were all Game Boy Advance games in Japan originally, but were all ported and released for the DS here. Apollo Justice is the 4th game in the series, chronologically at least, released in North America by Capcom in 2008, and follows years after the original Phoenix Wright trilogy. Is it a worthy sequel to an amazing trilogy? In my opinion, although this game isn't as highly regarded as the original ones, I still think it packs a lot of firepower and doesn't do much wrong, but doesn't really try to do anything different. Overall though, it's a worthy sequel and a great title. Apollo Justice follows the story of Apollo Justice, a rookie defense lawyer about to take his first case, a murder trial at a restaurant. It isn't long before the cases begin to get stranger and more elaborate. Phoenix Wright returns, but not in the way anyone expected or hoped to see him, and destinies begin to get intertwined as Apollo gets tested as an attorney. I know that really wasn't a detailed summary, but the plot twists start basically half an hour into the game. As an aside, you'll definitely want to play the first 3 games in the series to get a lot of the jokes and references. The story itself is actually a little more tame than the first 3 games because this game has more to establish. As a sequel to the first 3 games, it definitely isn't a half-assed sequel. It ties into the other games pretty neatly, though some things are left unexplained, leaving this aura of mystery and imagination to the plot. The game packs a lot of emotions and exciting moments, typical of the series, and there are a few more twists and insights into the characters here that I never really saw coming, and I really liked how all of these cases kind of intertwined with each other by the end, for the most part. Some may see the final case as a little less exciting than the former finales, but that didn't bother me too much. It was still a great ending. There's not much more I can say about the story except that it's on par with the other games, and deals with Apollo's maturity, revenge, justice, murder, redemption, everything you know and love about the Ace Attorney series. The characters are all pretty good. Apollo isn't that much different from Phoenix, although his hair is somehow more ridiculous, don't ask me how. This relationship to Mr. Wright is both good and bad. Good because Phoenix Wright is hilarious and awesome, but kinda bad because a more original personality would have been more fun than the typical sarcastic, naive attorney that we usually get. Your new assistant, Trucy, is much like your former assistant, Maya, but Trucy is a little younger and somehow more naive than Maya. Again, she's about on par with her predecessor, and that can be both a good and a bad thing. The 2 roles that changed and I didn't like were Emma Skye, who replaces Gumshoe, and the main prosecutor, Cleaver Gavin. Emma Skye is just a little too unlikable and kind of rude, but still funny, I guess. It just sucks that Gumshoe is nowhere to be found in this game. I don't even think he was mentioned. And that's like a bunch of other characters from the previous game, and I'm not quite sure why that is. Maybe they'll tie it in future titles. Cleaver Gavin is our new prosecutor, and he's very cool and a fun character, but he's not quite as threatening as the previous prosecutors. I never felt intimidated like I did with Edgeworth or the Von Karmas, but at least the game tried to do something different, and I respect that. Still cool. Of course, there's a bunch of side characters, and although I don't remember their names, I remember every single design and their personalities. It's the biggest strength of this series is the writing and the characters, and you really see that in Apollo Justice. Overall, the characters in the game are sometimes mirrors of former characters, but in a series with very short play times and always leaving a thirst for more, this isn't necessarily a bad thing, and you'll hear that theme a lot in this review. Let's dive into the gameplay. I won't go into detail, I already did that in my last review, but here are some newer things the game added, which is pretty short, but hey, it's not a bad thing. The first new feature is Apollo's ability to perceive, where you use Apollo's mighty vision bracelet thing to slow down time and look at the witness's body language during certain statements to see if they're lying. This was a really interesting and creative new feature that expanded the gameplay, and it was a lot of fun to be that asshole on the bus who yelled, "Gotcha!"
Gotcha!
However, you don't use this feature much, and when you do, the game pretty much tells you when you have to use it, which makes things a little too easy. The other new feature is the use of video evidence. I know, Case 5 of the first game had video evidence, but that was a DS exclusive case. Does not count. Anyways, there's a long video in one case that you have to keenly examine to find good counter arguments, and this made the gameplay a lot more varied and fun in my opinion, because it kind of upped the difficulty. There's no more pictures anymore, this is a moving piece of evidence you have to look at and consider. The final kind of change, and one I didn't like, was the overuse of Emma's forensic equipment, where you search for fingerprints or do other sciencey stuff. It's okay when you can kind of examine evidence from different angles, but I didn't like the really easy, pointless little distraction kind of minigames you had to do once in a while. I guess they kind of changed the pace up, but it was kind of wasting time in my opinion. That does it for all the new additions, if I remember correctly. As I said, the game doesn't add much to the series. There's still the cross-examinations, you still have to find contradictions, you still have to answer questions, stay on your toes, all that good stuff, solving these fantastic mysteries, but it still stays fresh with more fantastic writing, excellent drama, and just good puzzles. Good puzzle solving, good thinking. There's just a lot of thought that goes into these games, and you can tell. Case by case, the game has 4 main mysteries to solve, which sucks a bit because I've been kind of spoiled with these games having 5 cases now, but these 4 cases are all quality stuff. Nothing that stands way above the other cases, like the finales of the first 3 titles, but that means that there's no circus debacles either. The first case, I think, was a little too challenging for beginners, yet still very fun. The second case was kind of predictable, but a fun ride thanks to the characters. The third case is probably my favorite, a lot of fun for many reasons, including challenge. And the last case was a little underwhelming for a finale, but the game chose to focus on the story of the overall series, and I can't fault it for being kinda different. Overall, the gameplay is exactly what you'd expect if you played the first games, which is what fans of the original series like me were probably looking for. The graphics in the game are pretty much exactly like their predecessors. The art style is still really colorful, and there's a lot of fun animations and character designs. Damn, those games know how to capitalize on crazy, memorable character designs. Not much else to say graphically, except for the fact that video clips were pretty impressive for the hardware. The music in the game is fantastic. Nothing against the original 3 games, but this game has the advantage of original DS music, which makes it much less limited than its previous titles. Not to say that those soundtracks were inferior or anything, and I think that would make an interesting debate, but I'm just saying. Forgotten Legend, the Cornered theme, Tell the Truth, Child of Magic, it's an incredible soundtrack. In fact, the Cornered theme is still my iPhone ringtone, and I used it for over a year now. My text tone is Apollo saying, "Gotcha!" Probably because I like to scare the shit out of people. In conclusion, Apollo Justice Ace Attorney is a worthy sequel to the Phoenix Wright games, and I think it was a smart decision by Capcom to change the story up. The original characters of the Phoenix Wright trilogy left in their prime, and it was time for some fresh faces and gameplay. In that same vein, the only thing I would complain about with the game is that it's not quite different enough, but if you're a die-hard fan of the series always thirsting for more, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'd say definitely pick this one up if you're into the series, though you probably have if you're into these games, but for newcomers, start with the original trilogy before moving your way to this one. If you're a fan of mystery novels or courtroom dramas, and you want to see some of the most hilarious writing in gaming today, you have to check this series out. Thanks for watching.